Working with data over time, you will learn that sometimes you build data sets only to get to the totals. What I mean is, the person who asks you for the top customers doesn't want to receive every single line of data that's required to get to the top customers. They just want that data that represents the top. We've gone through our process and we've confirmed our data is accurate. We've even created a query called customers list. This is customers without all the noise in the main table. We've confirmed that we have our orders and our details, so we're really ready to start working with the data to get that complete data set for top customers. Let's go ahead and take a look at the order table. So I'll go ahead and double click orders. Now, what I want you to notice is that this has a ton of information. It has our order ID and our customer ID. But what it doesn't have is a total order amount. Let's open up order details. Order details also has the order ID, and it has the different pieces we need for that line total, like unit price and quantity. So what we want to do is create a quick query that has a calculation that gives us the order ID, it gives us the unit price, the quantity, and then a line total calculation. I'll go to create, I'll choose query design. I'll go ahead and bring in my order details. I need my order ID. I'll bring in my unit price and my quantity. Now, it could be that you also need to include the tax rate, but for our example, they want just the unit price and quantity. That's because tax rate varies. They really want to see who's ordering the most and how much. I'll go ahead and save this query as orders, detail, line, total. Okay, and I can go ahead and close my add tables there. I'll right click in that first blank column and choose build. I'll double click on my unit price. I'll multiply it by my quantity. I'll go ahead and click OK. Now, by default, it's going to give me that expression 1 heading. I'll go ahead and adjust that to read line total. All right, and then I can run it. All right, perfect. So now it tells me for order number 45 in this particular line that it's 112 in unit price times 50, giving me 5,600 as my line total. Still not enough information, though. I need to now tie it back to my customer, and I need to total up by order by customer. All right, so let's go ahead, save this, and we can go ahead and close all of our different pieces. I'll choose close all. I'll go ahead and choose create, query design, and I'll go to queries. I'll go ahead and query queries. I'll drag my customer list, and then I'll also drag over my order details line total. And then I can close the add tables. Okay, what I know about joins, I can see a problem here. I can't just build a query that doesn't have a join line. I don't have a common field between my customer and my order details. So what I need to do is actually bring in my orders table, and that will bridge the gap. I know that because it contains a customer ID and an order ID. So I'll bring these in, and I'll do customer ID to customer ID, and I'll do order ID to order ID. Okay, I'll go ahead and double click customer name, and then I'll go ahead and bring in my line total, and I may want to count my order, so I'll go ahead and double click my order ID. All right, let's run this. Let's go ahead and sort it. So I'll just right click and sort by the customer name. Now, all this information is valuable, but it doesn't get us to where we need to be for top customers. We really need to go create that total query. So let's go to the design view. And what we'll do is we'll choose the totals button. In other programs like SQL and Power BI, you'll hear this referenced as the group by field. In our query grid below, note that you see a group by line. This allows us to choose how our data is grouped and what fields we use to create aggregate functions. So, for example, I want to group by the customer. I want to actually sum the line total. And then I also want to count the order ID. This will allow me to count the total number of orders each customer placed. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and run my query. And double click so I can see that. Okay, let's go ahead and change our view. Let's go ahead and remove that count of the order ID because really all we really need is the customer and the line total. And I also want to format that line total to look like US dollars. So I'll just right click and go to properties and go ahead and assign that currency format. And then let me run it again. Okay, so I have all of the information I need. But one thing I might want to do is go ahead and sort it descending order of the amount. That way it puts all of my top orders up top. I'll go ahead and go back to the design view, and in the sort by line, I'll choose descending. I'll run it again. Okay, so now I see customers and all of them with all of their total order amounts listed by highest order amounts first. Let's go ahead and save this as base top customers. We certainly want to explore this further, so let's go ahead and export it out so that we can discuss this data with the person who's requested the top customers. That way we can work with it outside of the database and gain some better understanding of how they want to visualize the data. I'll go ahead and choose external data. In my export, I'll choose Excel. I'll go ahead and put it into my exercise files. I'll go ahead and put it into my data folder. I'll go ahead and name it base top customers and choose save. I'll go ahead and click OK. It'll tell me that it was successful, and then I can choose close. Total queries allow you to take thousands of records and sum them up in a single query. It's really not unlike using AutoSum in Excel. It's important to note that when you don't have all the information you need to go through the process of compiling it, just as we've done throughout this chapter. These queries provide value, and they're time-saving because we don't have to put them in Excel and AutoSum them every time we want to work with them. We can just run them directly out of our data systems. Here's our challenge. We want to build a totals query that gives us a number of total orders placed by customer. We also want it to be sorted with the highest number of orders first. The query needs to display the customer ID, the customer's name, as well as the total number of orders they placed. But it also needs to show all the customers, even if they've not made an order. This challenge could take you anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to complete, and it will leverage the skills you've learned in this chapter. I'm going to start by creating the query for my customers and my orders. I'll go to Create. I'll choose Query Design. I'll bring in Customer and Orders. Okay, I'll go ahead and relate the customer to the customer ID here. I'll bring in my customer name, and I'll bring in my order ID. Okay, let's run this query. Okay, perfect. All right, now what I want to do is go to my design view. Now, part of the challenge is to show all the customers regardless of order. So I'll go adjust my join properties to include all records from customers. And let me go run that again. Okay, and I got a couple here, or 3. All right, let me go back up to my first record. Okay, so now that I have that base data set good to go, I'll go to my totals. I'll group by customer ID, group by customer name, but I actually want to do a count of the order ID. And then I can run my query. Perfect. Let me go to my last. Awesome, and I have zeros. Okay, so now I always want it to show the highest customer orders first, so I'll go ahead and put that sort into my grid. Let's just go run that. Went the wrong direction. Let's do descending. Okay, perfect. I'll go ahead and save this challenge as challenge query. Click OK. And we're all done. As you become known around your office for your data skills, you'll be faced with what's known as ad hoc reporting. These are one-time requests from your leadership or manager, or sometimes even colleagues. Reports like top customers or numbers of orders not invoiced or even forecasting are examples of ongoing reports that drive business decisions. By ad hoc, I mean requests that aren't a standard part of your workload, and they're requested informally sometimes by colleagues. You may have also heard these referred to as one-off requests. Ad hoc requests are typically something you're going to perform one time, and it's not going to require the same time and effort as an organizational-wide report. Although it doesn't have the same time and effort, it does use the same exact tools and concepts, so you still have to validate and verify all the way through, and you still have to confirm your business rules. Ad hoc requests can help build your skills and help grow your data capabilities. Let's say, for example, you work inside the sales department, and they want to know how many purchase orders and the total amounts for those purchase orders for each customer are in the system. You have all the data you need to perform this ad hoc request. Simple data tasks can be done a number of ways, and I've found that we're creatures of habit, so we might be slow to adopting newer and better tools like Power Query. So let's open up our ad hoc file from our chapter folder, and let's see if we can accomplish the ask of how many purchase orders, what are the total amounts for each customer. We've already confirmed with the person who's requested this information that all we need is just a list of the customers, the count of their PO numbers, and the total dollar amounts based on the line total that's in our file. This might be a good time to rewind a few seconds and note out exactly what we're trying to accomplish. Remember, it's a really good practice so that you and the stakeholder both know what you're expecting when the analysis is finished. The very first thing we want to do is connect this data to Power Query, and if you need a refresher on how to do that, check the Foundations course in the library. I'll go to Data, and I'm going to pull this from Table Arrange. Okay, I'll go ahead and click OK here. I really only need the three values: customer name, line total, and purchase order. These are the three data points that make up my ad hoc request. I'll go ahead and do choose columns. I'll unselect, select all. I'll do customer name, customer purchase order, and line total. I'll go ahead and click OK. So now I have the three data points that I need for my actual ad hoc request. So I'm going to go ahead and sort by customer name. So I see my customer name, and I also want to go ahead and sort by my purchase order number. And it might be a good idea to go ahead and move that over. So I'll move that field. And again, you see it's keeping up with what I've done in my applied steps. All right, so I have customer name, I have their purchase orders, and then I have their line totals. Now, what's important to note is that I have the customer, and then here you see this is the purchase order, and it's repeated because there are multiple lines on this purchase order. So the very first thing I'm going to do is work with a group by. I want to group by my customer and then group by the purchase order, and then I want to total up those line totals. So I'll go over to my transform, and I'll choose group by. Okay, I'll select advanced. I'll do a customer grouping. I'll then go add a purchase order grouping. I'll go ahead and add total amount, where I actually sum the line total. I'll click OK. Great. Now, let me go ahead and sort by my customer name again. It's not necessary for me to do that, but I like to see my information lined up. So here, that same purchase order request was 10,168, and here it is now totaled. This particular customer has 11 different purchase orders, and that's part of my requirement. I need to actually count the purchase orders. And then I also want to total up the amount of all of their purchase orders. So I'll actually go do group by one more time. I'll group by, I'll do advanced. Again, I'm going to group by customer name. And this time I'm going to type count of POs. I'm just going to count the rows. And then I'm going to have total amount. And again, I'm going to sum the total amount. All right, I'll go ahead and click OK. So now I have each customer, a count of their POs, and the total amount of all of the POs. So this 54,813 represents the total amount of 11 POs for this customer. Okay, let's go ahead and go to home. I'll do close and load. So I have 660 rows of information loaded here based on my two group by statements. Now, once I've taken this over to my requester and they've taken a look at it, they've realized it's a lot of information here. So what they really want to do is see all of the customers who have totals that are over 55,000. So let's go back to our data. I'll hit the drop down by my total amount. I'll do a number filter of greater than or equal to 55,000. Now go ahead and click OK. Now I have 19 rows of data. I'll go ahead and close and load. We'll go ahead and name this POs by customer over 55K. Make it real clear so we all know what we're working with. Ad hoc requests when you have data skills is unavoidable. It's also important to remember your best practices because you never know when that ad hoc request is going to become the next big organizational report. When you're a data analyst, you become comfortable in spreadsheets and databases and looking at data sets in their raw format. But showing other people a set of thousands of records really isn't impactful, and even you won't be able to see the big picture with 1,000 records. This is where visualization comes into play in the data analyst role. Most analysts typically think about visualization as the outcome of their analysis, and they save building charts and graphs for the end of the process. Research in cognitive science shows us that humans can spot visual patterns pretty effectively, and nothing says there's an issue more than a gigantic column that isn't supposed to be there. In addition to spotting problems early, when we build basic charts and graphs, it helps our decision makers communicate what they might want to see in the final visuals. Let's look at two visual variations of the PO counts. Let's start with a pie chart. So I'll go ahead and highlight my customer name and my count of the POs, and I'll do an insert. I'll choose just a regular 2D pie. I'm not trying to build presentation graphics. I'm actually just looking at my data. Okay, I'll go ahead and remove that legend. So now this pie chart pretty much shows me that everything is pretty even. I have to look really deep to see any other variation. Okay, so there's one. Let me go ahead and zoom out. And let me try to visualize this again in a line chart to see if it's more compelling. I'll just choose, again, a standard 2D line. And right out of the gate, within the second I placed it on the sheet, I immediately see this dip in the PO count. That dip is not quite as obvious inside that pie chart. Now, as an analyst, this dip makes me want to go study this particular customer and look at their numbers. So I start trying to find, oh, here it is. Okay, how does their total amount compare to all the others? That's another type of visual. So let me go and highlight my customer name, choose a total amount, and this time I'll just go insert a basic column chart. Even if I stack them up and try to look at them, I'm still having to look between two visuals to see any type of picture. So let's try a combo. All right, so let me highlight my data here and let's do a combo chart. I'll go to Insert. I can choose my combo chart. Okay, and I want to go ahead and do a custom. All right, first of all, I want to put my count on a line, and I want to do a secondary axis. Now, the reason I'm doing that secondary axis is because the PO count numbers are totally different numbers than the actual total amount. So having them separated out on different axes is helpful for visualizing. Now, I'm going to change my total amount to a bar. Now I can easily see the line in relationship to the column. I'll go ahead and click OK there. Definitely prefer this visual. Size it out a little bit. Okay, let me move it to its own sheet tab. I'm going to call this Test Combo. Click OK. I like this combo chart. I can see the high points of the total count of POs, and I can see the low points of the POs. I can also see how they work with the different order amounts. For example, I can look at the peaks where I see I have a high count of POs, but the total order amount is a little bit lower. And then I've got those dips where I can see the trend of the total count of PO is going down, but those order amounts are high. This is a great way to visualize our total count of PO against the actual total order amount. And this is probably an artifact that I would take to my decision maker and discuss. It's important to remember that we might pick what we believe is the best display, but we don't always know up front what our stakeholders or decision makers are going to be using this data for and what visualization might be impactful for them. There's going to always be a little bit of back and forth before you land on the right type of visual. Exploring your data visually as a means of understanding it is not only a time saver, but it will also help you when someone else asks you about the information you're showing. It'll also help you to start thinking through how you might effectively visualize this later in dashboards or reports. Any artifact that you can discuss with people who will use this report will help them to communicate what they're really looking for, and you'll really accomplish a lot overall just by building some basic charts. Conditional formatting applies various formats based on condition we specify. Like, we can highlight values that are greater than 1,000, or we can show above or below average. When you sort and then you mix in meaningful conditional formats, you can easily discover information faster than any other traditional sort. We've been focused on the totals, and we filtered them to 55,000 and up. We've created a combo chart to capture the PO counts and the total amounts as a sample visual. But let's go back over to our PO counts again, and let's sort those total amounts highest to lowest. So I'll travel over to my file here. Okay, one of the things I want to do, because I'm going to supply conditional format, so I'm going to go ahead and change this table format. I'll go to Table Design. Okay, and I'm just going to choose No Format. I do want to go ahead and sort my total amount highest to lowest, so I'll right-click, and I'll sort it largest to smallest. Now that we've sorted the column, you notice that those PO counts fall in line with the sort. And this data is not appropriate for multiple sorting. We just have the customer name that we can sort by. We have the total amount we can sort by. If we had fields like products included, maybe we could do multiple sorts, but we'd still have the same issues with highlighting those PO counts because they're going to always fall in line with the sort. If we don't find a way to highlight them, we can easily miss that dip that we only see in that line chart in the combo. What if I said every PO, regardless of what's ordered, goes through the same standard process, and there's a cost associated to the company for each one of them? Would it stand to reason that we would want to keep our customers ordering and being effective with their POs because it does have an impact not only to us as a company, but also to them? I have a client right now going through this exact process. They're getting what they call nickel and dimed on the POs. They determined after some analysis that if they could get their clients to order effectively for the quarter, they could reduce the paperwork for all the parties involved and fulfill the same amount of products. Sound interesting? Let's take a look at how conditional formatting helps us to support the sort. Okay, I want to add conditional formatting to my PO count. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight these. And because I want to see what is the below average PO count for any of these orders over 55,000, I can use conditional formatting. I'll go to conditional formats, top and bottom rules, and I'll choose below average. And because this is positive, I'm going to make it green. Okay, so I'll click OK. Great. Now I can see all of the POs sorted by total amount and highlight the ones that are actually below the average. But I really want to do just a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to add icons. So I'm going to highlight my range again. I'll go to conditional formatting. I'll go to icon sets, and I'll go to my indicators. I'll choose the 3 symbols. We know by default it gives us the default rules. So I'll go back to my conditional formatting and choose manage rules. I'll choose my icon set, and I'll edit the rule. Again, by default, it believes that the highest numbers are the green checks. So I'm going to reverse my icon order, and then I'm going to tell my icons to be no cell icon. So when any PO count falls below 33% of the total value, it's going to give me a green checkbox. I'll go ahead and click OK. I'll go ahead and choose apply because I want to take a look at it. And then immediately the 12 and the 9 are checked. I'll go ahead and click OK. Now that I've supplied below average conditional formatting and highlighted any PO that falls below 33%, I can sort this range any way I would like, and I'm going to maintain that conditional formatting. For example, let me go ahead and sort by customer name. I can see that these customers are still in that below average range, and I can see those counts being 33% or less. I can sort my values again, this time doing smallest to largest, and the conditional formatting carries over on those POs. There is not a single answer to every single data visualization. There are just commands that we can apply when they may be applicable. It's so important to just expand your mind to think outside of just sorting and filtering. There's not a single answer to every single data visualization. These are just commands that we can apply when they may be applicable. You can learn a lot in the library of the various conditional formats that are available in Excel. And guess what? A lot of other programs do conditional formatting as well. It's a concept, not just a tool in Excel. I've been in plenty of environments where the executives of that organization have determined what types of visuals they expect and what colors they expect. As the rise of information on branding and company branding over the years has gained traction, you'll find that your organization may likely want you to maintain brand standards for their charts. No matter what scenario you find yourself in, the idea of changing colors of the charts from the standard color scheme to match the requirements over and over and over again is a drain on productivity when you can just set a chart template or customize the theme. Starting in Office 2007, I believe, there was a theme supplied to every document, spreadsheet, and PowerPoint, you name it. You should learn how to leverage this theme so it will save you critical time on less important tasks like changing fonts on every file or colors to match. You'll find these themes in Excel on the Page Layout tab. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Page Layout tab. And the very first section is Themes. I'll go ahead and hover over each one of these themes and let you see. Immediately, you see how that theme is impacting our charts. Okay, I'll go ahead and choose the dividend theme. Remember, depending on your version of Office, you may see different themes and you may see different theme names. When your organization has a brand standard and they send you those font colors and those theme colors and they expect you to use them, don't worry. You can spend a little time up front and create those themes and save yourself a ton of time. And they're little tricks that you can apply to provide them to your colleagues so that everyone in the department or organization would have consistent formatting throughout. This will really help you stand out. Now, it is important to note that even though I've selected a theme, I can adjust every color and I can adjust the colors in the actual theme. I'll go ahead and cancel that. I can adjust my fonts and again, customize my fonts for every type of information. And I can also supply different types of effects. Okay. Because you can adjust every color, every font, and every effect, you can see that adjusting the theme really does pay dividends. It saves you time and increases your productivity. Another option that you can supply to your charts is actually using chart templates. Let's go take a look at our test combo. So we noticed that when we built this beautiful dividends theme into our file, well, look at the impact to the line. The line is still there, but it's a relatively close color to the columns. I really want it to stand out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and choose my line there. I'll go ahead and go to my format option. I'll hit my paint can up top. And because I have a theme supplied, I see my exact theme colors. I want to choose this aqua color. I'll go to my line here and choose my aqua color again. And this is going to make my line stand out a little bit more. Remember, colors are preference or also determined by those brand standards and those guidelines. Okay, so now that I know that this is going to be the way I style this chart, I might as well go ahead and save this chart as a template. I'm going to right click and choose Save as Template. Okay, I'm going to name this my custom chart. And it's going to put it into a templates folder. I don't want to change that, and I'll show you why in just a second. I'll go ahead and choose Save. And now I have this chart template. All right, so let me go back over to my PO by customers. I'm going to highlight my information. Now when I go to Insert and I go to Recommended Charts, I can go over to All Charts and I can see my templates. There's my exact custom chart. Okay. Now what I'm going to do now is right click that and set that as the default chart. Okay, now let me show you how to use the default chart. All right, so I'm going to delete this one that I just created. I have my information highlighted. I'm going to press function key F11. And now I see my default chart. Amazing. And also a major increase in productivity. We all need more time. So if we implement settings that save us a little time over time, we really are increasing our productivity. When you build charts inside Excel, they live in Excel, and they're connected to the data inside that Excel file. But more often than not, we need to put those charts inside of things like Word documents or even PowerPoint. This is why it's important to know how Microsoft Office leverages linking and embedding information. This data is in this workbook, and it originates from other places. But for this particular file, the data we have here isn't linked anywhere else. It literally lives inside this spreadsheet. Let me show you what I mean. Let's go take a look at the PO by customers over 55. And if I choose the count of POs, you'll notice that this pie chart is linked to the data that's highlighted to the left of it. That means for this pie chart to change, the cells that it's linked to must be updated or changed. When you know about how to link charts into other files like Word or PowerPoint, then you can better understand how to leverage those commands. Okay, let's go ahead over to the chart that we created in our earlier chapter, and let's delete that. And then let's go to our test combo. This particular chart needs to go into a PowerPoint presentation. We want to go ahead and add our chart title. Let's call it Amount and PO Counts. So Amounts and PO Counts. Perfect. And let's go ahead and make a copy of this chart. I'm going to right click and choose copy. Now let's open up a blank PowerPoint presentation. Okay, I'll go ahead and give this a title. My charts for meeting. We'll go up to the Home tab. We're going to add a new blank slide. Okay, and I'll go ahead and close my design ideas. We can come back and review those later. Okay, now what I want to do is go ahead and paste my chart. I'll right click, and I have several paste options. I can use the destination theme and embed the workbook. Now this means look at the theme that's inside of PowerPoint. That's the destination, and embed the workbook. Now what that will do is actually put a workbook inside the PowerPoint. It's a mock-up, basically, of your actual Excel file that's embedded here. And it also means that when you update your Excel workbook, it's not going to update your PowerPoint file. You have keep source formatting and embed the workbook. Now, what this means is it's going to use the theme in the Excel file, and it's going to embed it into the PowerPoint. You have another option of using the destination theme and linking the data. Now, what this means is that it'll use the destination theme of PowerPoint, and it will link the data from the Excel file directly to PowerPoint. That means when your Excel file updates, your PowerPoint will update. Now, this sounds like a great command, but now if the person who's using the PowerPoint doesn't have access to the same location as the Excel file, well, it can be dangerous. You also have keep the source formatting. Again, what does it look like in Excel? And then it links it here so that if I update my Excel file, it updates my PowerPoint. And then you have the ability to just insert a picture. Now that means it operates like a picture. It's an object like a PNG. It means I can size it and it won't change. It also means that my data won't update. Okay, let's go ahead and insert it as a picture. And then you can see we can size it. Automatically in this version of Office, I get my design ideas. Okay, so I'm going to choose this option here. Again, it just sees this as a picture. All right, let me go back up to Home. I'm going to insert a new blank slide, and let me paste it again. And I'm going to keep my source formatting, and I'm going to embed the workbook. Again, this keeps the format from Excel that's supplied. It also embeds a workbook object. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so I'll go ahead and choose my design there. I'll right click. I go to my edit data, and I get two options. I can directly edit the data to change it here, or I can open up that embedded Excel document. I'll choose edit data in Excel. I get the standard security notice. I'll choose enable. And now I have a chart object. This chart object, if you look in the title bar, tells me that it's a chart inside of PowerPoint. So instead of being the actual Excel file, it's a version of it that's only inside of PowerPoint. I'll go ahead and close that. Let me navigate back over to my PowerPoint presentation. These two commands, picture and embed, are the two safest options. Picture, of course, is flat. It's an image. Embed gives us the ability to look at the file without actually having to be linked to the actual file. Again, if you link the PowerPoint presentation, that means that you have to have access to the same location in order to feed the actual PowerPoint. So options of pictures and embed are our two safest options. Again, once you know how to leverage these tools, you can leverage them to your benefit. There is no single right answer for every single scenario. You choose based on understanding linking versus embedding, and you pick the right option based on what you're trying to accomplish. Here's our challenge. We've been asked to provide counts of POs and total amounts for each customer for a presentation. We want our data to be sorted by the total amount highest to lowest. We also want to highlight the total counts of POs that are above the average using red as an indication that these should be further explored. We also want to highlight the total amounts that are in the top 15% in green because they're the highest values, and actually they're good. We also want to display a line chart of the PO counts and embed it into a PowerPoint presentation. This is so our manager can discuss it with their leadership. Because our brand colors are blue, we want to leverage themes that are primarily blue. We'll use the ad hoc challenge files in our challenge folder. This challenge should take you 5 to 10 minutes to perform. Okay, I'm going to start with my first requirement, which is to sort my total amount highest to lowest. So I'll right click, go to sort. I'll sort largest to smallest. My second requirement is to highlight the total counts of POs that are above the average using some form of red as an indication. So I'll go ahead and highlight these values. I'll go to my conditional formatting. I'll go to my top bottom rules. I'll choose my above average as my requirement states, and I'll use that light red fill and dark red text. Okay, I'll go ahead and click OK. My next requirement is to highlight the total amounts that are 15% or more. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this range. I'll go to conditional formatting, go to my top bottom rules. I'll go to top 10% and change that to 15. And because these are good, I'll use green based on my requirements. Okay, and then I can immediately see that I have a total amount, and the top two are actually in the top 15%. And then I can see only one of them has an above average PO count. Okay, I've also been asked to display a line chart of these PO counts. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight my range. I'll go to my insert. I'll choose my lines. I'll just choose first line chart. Do a little sizing there. And because our brand colors are blue, they ask me to use a blue related theme. So I'll go look at my different themes here. I definitely want to have a blue line. So I'll go ahead and choose slice. And then the final part of my requirement is to put this line chart into a PowerPoint presentation as an embedded object. So I'll go ahead and right click and copy my chart. I'll go to my PowerPoint presentation. I'll add a new blank slide. I'll go ahead and paste that. I'll use my source formatting and I'll embed my workbook. Okay, and I'll go ahead and size, and I'll leverage this design ideas to go ahead and do the sizing for me. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and save my work. You could have selected different colors, different themes, maybe different line charts, but if you came close to this, then you met the challenge. To be able to pivot data is a fundamental skill of all data workers, not just analysts. And really, anyone that uses Excel with a data set should be able to pivot. For most people, it's hard to wrap your mind around how you can take a set of data and display it in a pivot format. The displays are valuable, and yes, they can look very complex. But what people don't realize is that it's actually harder to build the display without the tools dedicated to making pivot displays, like pivot tables in Excel. Just like the word query is a question and a tool, pivot tables are both a display and a tool. Pivot tables display values from data at the cross-section of X and Y, and when people think about X and Y, they may start to think about their bad experiences with algebra in school. And if you Google about the X and Y axis, you might see words like Cartesian coordinate system, and you might just pass out. Let's just keep it simple. X is the main headings that go horizontal across the top of a pivot, and the Y-axis is the row headings that go vertical down the side of the pivot. Now, this will get more meaningful as we go through the rest of this chapter, but where the X column headings and the Y row headings meet, well, that's the value. Have you ever built a monthly budget? You might add January through December. This is the X-axis. And then you would add your monthly budget items. Down the left side, that's the Y-axis. And then you would go determine how much money you spent for each budget item for each month, and you would plug it in. That's you building a simple pivot display. If you were to pull your bank data so that you could actually provide yourself the actuals for your budget, you would definitely want to see it as a pivot. You'll learn that there is nothing better on earth than a tool that can pivot. It will transform your data into a pivot display. And what's really great with any data set, and also the challenge, is that you decide which is the X columns across the top and the Y, which is the row headings down the left. Looking at the pivot data file in our chapter folder, if I ask you to tell me for each month of the year for each customer, how much did we invoice them, you would certainly try to give me the answer, right? And if you don't know how to pivot, you might start by some sorting. You'd sort by customer, and then you would sort by the date. You'd maybe realize pretty quickly that this is a big task if you don't know how to pivot data with the tools to get the display. And then you might be doing all kinds of inefficient methods to get the display. Faced with the same request, and you do know how to use pivot tools, then it's as simple as adding the pivot on top of your data, which we'll dig deeper into throughout this chapter. You see, it's not the tool that's hard. It's knowing exactly what to plug and where to plug it to achieve what we think we're looking for. That's the hard part. Almost all data tools that I work with have a tool to display a pivot, although they may call them something different like crosstabs or matrix. The key to remember is that pivots are a display, and that you will use a pivot tool like pivot tables in Excel to build those displays. Pivoting data is one of the most powerful tools in your data toolbox. The best starting point is to learn how to build them in Excel, and then you'll know how to conceptually build them anywhere. When using a pivot tool on data, it's important to remember the pivot you build is going to use the data you provide. It will not change the underlying data set. And speaking of data sets, pivot tools expect a clean data set, similar to what you see in our pivot data file in our exercise folder. So you need to do those cleaning steps before you actually pivot. Pivot tools use column headings to create your available fields, and because you'll be calculating values, you want to make sure your fields have the correct data type. For example, dates are dates and numbers are numbers, not text. If you need a refresher on cleaning data and making meaningful headers, check out the previous course, Learning Data Analytics Part 1, in the library. Now let's insert our first pivot. I'll go to Insert, Tables, Pivot Table. It automatically detects my range, and I do want it to be on a new worksheet. I'll go ahead and click OK. One of the first things I want to show you is that on the left-hand side is where the pivot table will actually show the display. And on the right-hand side is where you actually build the pivot table. Screen space is important. I'm going to go ahead and minimize my ribbon so I can see more of my pivot table fields. I'll just double-click one of my ribbon tabs. Okay, great. The pivot tool in Excel has 4 main areas: filters, columns, rows, and values. Remember, the columns and rows intersect to show a value, and well, filters do just that. They filter. The value options in Excel are different aggregate functions like sum and average and counts. The first hurdle for most people is just dragging things in and exploring what the pivot might look like. I've found over the years that people are hesitant to drag and drop fields into the pivot. They're afraid they're going to be wrong, or they're going to break something, or they may just be unsure what to put where. Remember, pivots really tell a numbers story of our data, and each pivot can actually tell a different story about the data you're working with. Let's build a pivot to gauge our invoice counts by each customer for each month and year. Since we want to look month over month, we're going to use the invoice date field. Let's drag it into columns. Depending on your version of Excel, it might automatically group by month, However, earlier versions required us to have that extra step of grouping. Remember, only date data types can do this. It will not group if you use text. So you want to make sure that your actual date is a date data type. And remember, because pivots don't adjust the underlying data, you'll need to return to the data set to make this change. Now, let's go ahead and add our invoice ID to the values. I want you to note that by default, it summed the invoice ID versus counted. I've been asked this over the years. Why does it default to sum? That's because our invoice ID is actually set to a number data type. I actually need it to count. So what I can do is adjust the sum value to a count value. I'll go to my sum of invoice ID. I'll go to my value field settings, and I'll change it to count. Had it been a text data type, it would have counted by default. I'll go ahead and click OK. Now we see for each year and each quarter and each month how many invoices we had per customer. Let's go ahead and change this up a little bit. I'm going to move quarters out of the mix. I'll just drag and drop quarters out. Now I just see the year and the month. Now let's change our pivot to look at our products ordered each month. We'll want to change our row heading to the description for our field product names, and we'll want to change the value to the quantity field because that field actually tells us how much of each product's been ordered. It's really easy to pivot this information. I'll go ahead and drag out my customer name. I'll bring my description into my rows. I'll go ahead and remove my count of invoice ID, and I'll scroll and choose my quantity. Okay, I'll do a little bit of resizing here to take a look at it. Now I can see each product and how much of each product was ordered for each month, each quarter, and each year in my data set. Now we've seen two different insights on the data. We've seen how many invoices were created by month and how many of each product were ordered based on the quantity for each month and each year. Remember, pivots give us critical insight into our data, and they're easy to change. You just have to begin to become comfortable moving things around inside those columns and rows and values until you figure out exactly which story you're trying to tell. Pivots are critical storytellers. When our decision makers are asking for pivots or numbers, they're really wanting to be able to look at the numbers and make some decisions and gain understanding. The issue is that numbers, and specifically lots of them and large ones like what we have in our data set here, can be challenging for someone reading a pivot to get the information they need and get it quickly. Let's work through the three most common scenarios, which are values as a percentage of the grand total, percentage of the row total, and a percentage of the column total. The very first thing I want to do is go ahead and name this sheet. I'll double click that and call it original data pivot. Then I'll control drag and drop a copy because I don't want to rebuild it each time. And I'll go ahead and name this one percentage values. I'm not exactly sure if I want all three or if I just want one of them. So percentage value is a good name for now. Okay, the very first thing I want to do is look at what are each one of these by year as compared to the grand total, meaning 1,690 of this first product. What does that 1,690 represent as a percentage of the total of all of the products in all years? I can accomplish this by changing this value to show as a percentage of the grand total. So what I'll do is I'll right click, I'll choose show value as, and I'll choose percent of grand total. Automatically, I see one of the features kick in of a pivot table, and that's the automatic sizing. My product names are long, and there's a really lengthy one in this list. So instead of always resizing, I'm going to size it this one time, and I'm going to turn off the setting that does that particular column fit. I'll go to my pivot table analyze, I'll go to pivot tables, I'll choose options. And I'll uncheck the box for AutoFit column widths on update. All right, I'll go ahead and click OK. Now, as I make other changes, it won't automatically size every single time. All right, so what is the percentage of grand total actually showing me? The very first thing I want to do is take a look at the very bottom of the pivot. I'll scroll to the bottom here. The grand total equals 100%, and all of these totals total up to be 100%, which you can see there in my auto calculate. That means that for every year and every product individually, it is showing me how much of it represents the actual percent towards the grand total. So let me go back up to the top here. And let me sort my grand total by the highest one. So I'll go ahead and sort, and I'll sort largest to smallest. So I can see this first product is actually 2.39% of the grand total. And then I can see its breakdown of each year. So in 2018, the products ordered makes up 0.71% of the grand total for all years. So that's what the percent of the grand total gives me. Now, what if I want to look year over year? How did all of the products compare to each other year over year? So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and right click. I'll go to show value as, and I'll do a percentage of the column total. Okay, so in year 2018, this product represented 2.42% of the 2018 values. Let's go back down to the bottom of the pivot and notice that it equals 100%. And each one of these columns actually equals up to 100%. So if I'm doing an annual comparison of each product against each product, and I want to look that way, well, I do a percentage of the column total. All right, let's go back up to the top of our pivot. Every year, a product may have had its best year ever. We don't know that unless we look. So we're going to actually adjust the value to show as a value of the row total. Now, this one's easy enough because you can see the row total equals up to 100%, and all the values for each year equals up to 100%. And now I can see for this product that 2019 was actually its best year. That's what the percentage of the row total will show me. It'll let me look at a single product and its year over year performance. People will ask me, well, which one do you use? And I tell them it depends on the story I'm trying to tell. If I'm looking for how something is done in the collective over all time for all products, I might use the percentage of grand total. If I want to look at an annual look at each product and its performance against other products, I'll use the percentage of column total. And if I want to look at a single product and its year over year performance against itself, I'll use the percentage of the row total. Remember, this is data analytics, not just data cleaning. When you're preparing pivots, remember they're going to be explored for decision making and further analysis. And using value percentages definitely helps make them more readable. A picture is worth thousands of lines of data. And this is where visualizing your pivot data can be impactful. This will allow you to explore your data visually versus just reading the numbers. I think it's important that you do use visuals to show the different stories of the data. But again, I like to have both the numbers as well as the visual. Let's take our existing pivots and we'll create these different visualizations of the data. And we found after speaking with our team that they also found it impactful to look at the single year over year performance per product. But they noticed a few things that we need to adjust for our upcoming meeting. For example, they want to look at the volume in price versus the volume in quantity. So we'll go ahead and copy this sheet because it's really easy to make this change in a pivot. I'll go ahead and remove my sum of quantity. I'll go grab my total line and drag that to values. Because they want to look historically at the last 3 years, I'll go ahead and filter out 2021. I'll do filter, and I'll hide those selected items. All right, I'll go ahead and sort by my grand total. That'll move my highest volume products to the top. And because they don't need to see the grand total for the display, I'll go ahead and right-click and remove that grand total. Also, for the purposes of our meeting, they really only want to see a handful of the top items. So let me sort it again. I want to see the highest in 2020. Perfect. So any volume that was over 50,000 makes it into our final visualization. Okay. So there's my checkpoint right there. I'm going to go ahead and highlight these values. I'll right click and filter. And instead of hiding them, I'm going to keep only these items. One of the last little changes we need to make is we don't need to filter the years down to the quarters of the months. So I'll go ahead and drag out quarters and drag out months. Okay, now I have everything set, except I need to show that value as a percentage of the row total. Now that I've made my changes, I'm ready to go ahead and start visualizing this data. The very first thing I'm going to do is add columns. I'm going to add columns using Sparklines. I'll go to Insert, I'll go to Sparklines, and I'll choose Columns. My data range is this line. It's going to show me columns based on the percentages. I'll go ahead and click OK. And I immediately see my last 2 years of performance were better than my 2018 performance. All right, so I'll go ahead and highlight this and bring it on down. Perfect. Now I'm visualizing based on the size of the column, and that might draw my eye to look at the actual numbers that will then take me to look at the actual product. There's some more we can do with these sparklines to make them stand out. I'll go to the sparkline up top. I'll go to my marker color. I'll choose my high point. I want it to be green. And then I want my low point to be that deeper red. Now I can see my high points, my low points, and I can see where everything else falls in between. It's just a quick, easy way to visualize all that line of data without having to have an individual chart for every product. Okay, let's go ahead and name this product year over year. And then we want to go ahead and save our work. We don't want to lose any of that valuable work. Okay, looking at our sparklines, we decide maybe a line might be more appropriate than the columns. So let's go to sparkline. Let's choose line. After review, we look at it, we decide maybe column would be better. We'll go ahead and adjust it back. You can learn a lot more about sparklines inside the library. So now what we want to do is actually start looking and exploring an actual visual. Let's build a comprehensive bar chart. Let's go up and close our field list. Let's go to our Analyze tab. We're really through structuring our pivot, so I'm going to go ahead and double click and bring my ribbon back so that it's not minimized. I'll go ahead and choose Pivot Chart. I'll go ahead and choose Bar. And for this particular scenario, I don't want staggered bars. I actually want stacked 100%. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this 100% stacked bar. That lets me see the percentages all the way out to 100%, which is appropriate for this particular data set. I'll go ahead and click OK. I think it's important to note with a bar chart that's 100% stacked or even a column chart that's 100% stacked, I don't have to have that percentage of rows set. It would do that automatically for me inside my chart. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just size a little bit. I'm going to zoom out so I can see. Okay, I'll drag it down. Okay, perfect. Starting to see some really valuable information here. So now that I have my pivot set for my percentages, which is easier to read, I have the line by line visuals, and I have a comprehensive visual of all the products that remained in the set. It might be nice to have a slicer. That way my decision makers can look at different aspects of this data. I'll click in my pivot, I'll go to my Analyze tab, and I'll insert a slicer. I want to slice on that invoice date. Click OK, and it gives me the months, which is perfect. Okay, So now if I want to look year over year for January, I can click January and I can see all of the data update. If I want to look at February or March, or even compare the first quarter, I can control select those filters. Perfect. This can be used as a precursor to building dashboards. That way, you can ultimately get on the same page with your decision makers about the ways they might want to explore the data. I think we can all agree that using sparklines to show a line-by-line comparison in a visual definitely can help support the analysis of the data. And then looking at your slicers and filters, definitely helpful to break your data down when you have large data sets. No matter why you visualize or how you visualize or what you visualize, ultimately, each pivot table and visual you create should be defined to tell a particular story about that data. Now that you've begun to understand that pivots are more than just a display, they're a tool, then you can leverage the information to create some additional data sets. What I want to show you is the drill down capability of the data inside your pivot. There are some values that we want to explore the data. And if you don't know how to leverage the pivot table tools, you may find yourself again doing a lot of extra filters and starting over. However, I think it's important to note that we can drill down on any set of data inside of a pivot. Let me show you what I mean by that. For example, I want to take a look at the 2020 data for this first product. I want to explore it further. All I really need to do is double-click the percentage. This gives me a drill down of this particular product. You can see that in the description, and just the 2020 values. That way I can explore that information a little bit further. I don't have to go filter it or create it or figure out all the customers that make it up. I can just drill it down straight from the actual pivot. Let's go take a look at another one. Okay, so I'll scroll down. And I want to take a look at all of the 2020 data for all of the products. I'll go ahead and double click that grand total percentage. And now I see all of the 2020 values and all of those particular products. This will allow me to create additional pivots and do additional exploration on this data. It's important to understand that this data is at a point in time, and these data sets are not connected, so they don't automatically update. I'm just generating them so that I can explore them a little bit further. What I really mean by that is if I get new data, I might need to manually update these drill down data sets. So I can use these for more exploratory purposes at the beginning or end of any project, just to get a little bit more detailed data without having to go filter and create it myself. Leveraging the skills we gained from this chapter, we want to take a look at our customers based on the extended prices and determine what year the customers had their best year. You also want to be able to use spark lines to highlight the values as well as showing the percentages year over year. This challenge can take you anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. I'll start by adding a pivot table. I'll go to my Insert tab, go to my pivot table, click OK. I do want to look at my customer, and I want to look at them year over year. So I'll drag invoice date to columns. And again, by default, it gives me additional date. So I'll go ahead and pull the invoice date out in quarters because I'm looking at a year over year performance. And we're going to use that extended price. I'll go ahead and drag that in. Okay, great. So now I can see each customer and how they did each year based on that extended price. And what I want to do now is show this as a percentage so I can see how they rank. So I'm going to go ahead and show values as a percentage of the row total. And again, these total up to be 100%. So this lets me see how this customer did each year. Okay, great. Now I'm going to add my spark lines. So I'll go to my insert. I'll go to my spark lines. I'll add my line. My data ranges here. And I want to place here. I'll go ahead and click OK. And I can see for this customer, they're trending down. Now I'll go ahead and drag these spark lines all the way down. Okay, great. Let me scroll back up to the top here. Okay. And then I'll highlight my spark line there. And I'll go ahead and mark my high point. Perfect. And let's make that high point green. Perfect. Now on my spark line, I can see the trend either up or down, and then I can see that spark line has that high point highlighted. Maybe make it just a little bit bigger. I'll go to the weight there. That might be a little bit too big. Let's bring it down just a little bit. Perfect. Okay, great. And if I want to add markers for every point, I can do that. Maybe a little distracting. I think I'll just have that high point. Okay, great. So I can see each customer. I can see their performance against their self year over year. And I also have a spark line to mark out their high points. I call this challenge done. The primary goal of any dashboard is to be able to glance and get an idea of what's happening with the organization or even within a process like sales, for example. The easiest way to think of a dashboard is to imagine the dashboard of a vehicle. The dashboard is a simple interface that gives us an idea of what's going on with the vehicle. There's one part of the dashboard we can all think about, and we use it quite regularly. That's the gas gauge. We know when it's full and we know when it's low, and we make decisions for when we stop for gas. There are lights that only light up when there's an issue with the car, like tire pressure or even oil engine lights. This information tells us we should either stop driving or drive for service to explore what's going on, and that's exactly how a dashboard should work. There are lots of things going on behind the scenes of a car that are supplying data to that dashboard, and even though we don't see it, we do see the end result. If you haven't ever designed a dashboard and you're used to printed pages, well, building the first one will be the toughest, and then you'll discover, like everything else, it's a process. In this chapter, I'm going to walk you through the steps I take in building a dashboard, no matter what tool I'm using. I'll gather and clean the data that's needed for the dashboard. I'll start building what I call dashboard artifacts. This allows me to explore the best ways to visualize the data to answer the questions. I'll build a sample dashboard, and I'll explore the user experience through the filters that are supplied, and then I'll refine and publish the dashboard as the final step. These are my steps, and they're pretty universal and pretty consistent regardless of the tool that I use. There are other courses in the library that will have more suggestions for you to explore, but at the beginning, just having some form of process is better than no process. Before you ever put the first artifact on your dashboard, you'll have needed to spend time upfront with your data. This means connecting to it and getting that data to the cleaned state. And for our examples here, we're using Power BI Desktop, and Power Query is the data prep tool that we'll use. Dashboards are visual expressions of the data, and they're meant to be interactive. That means they're not great for thousands of lines of data. Those would be more appropriate for paginated reports. When you're designing a dashboard for the first time, you may not know the best way to visualize the data. I get around this by creating what I call dashboard artifacts. And once I find the one that tells the data story in the clearest way, I'll pop it onto my sample dashboard. The world is full of paginated reports, and these are reports with lots of lines. You'll find them PDF'd or even printed, and they're produced with tools like Power BI Report Builder, SQL Server Reporting Services, or even Crystal Reports. These are multi-page reports, and they're not always positive interactive experiences. And when laying things out on a dashboard, screen space is limited no matter how big your screen may be. So choosing what goes where is as much an art as it is a science. And you should explore the library for more information on the best ways to visualize your data, not just building dashboards. Because dashboard tools are meant for the user to experience instant gratification in exploring the data, most data tools have different layers of filters. Soft filters, as I like to call them, are filters that are applied by the user using slicers or even interactive visuals. And filters that we place on the page or on the actual visual, these are called hard filters, meaning that they're hard-coded into that visual or into that page. As I work through the filters, I'll save that soft filtering editing process as my next to last step. I'll set the final settings for those filters and edit the way they interact with other visuals. If I have one piece of advice to follow about any layout, it's that you need to save the intricate sizing and formatting to the very end, because the objects will shift a lot, and you can spend a lot of time formatting and reformatting during the process. I save that intense attention to detail for when I know where everything is going to be on the dashboard. Trust me now and thank me later. Don't go crazy and build something unreadable. Just don't do all that daunting end work of sizing until you get to the end. When building a dashboard, never lose sight of the purpose of the dashboard. Your process may be a little different than others, but the goal is to have a process that helps you build effective dashboards. Your dashboard should provide insight to the decision makers and the consumers of the information. Dashboards are not only valuable to your organization, but being able to build them is a very valuable skill. Decision makers will literally ask for everything on a dashboard. That's because they're not sure how they want to consume the information in a glance. When designing a dashboard, you might want to consider that you really can't put everything on the dashboard. It would be too overwhelming to really be meaningful. I like to create what I call artifacts, which are samples that might go into the dashboard or might not. Let's start by connecting to our data so we can take a look at our product lines. I'll go ahead and get data, go to Excel, and choose my 2020 sales. This workbook has tables defining the data as well as sheet tabs called returns and sales. I could choose either one, but I'll go ahead and choose order status and sales 2020, and I'll choose load. Okay, it's detected a relationship between our data, so I'm going to go check that first. I'll go to the model. I'll go ahead and minimize my properties here, and I can see the join line. Okay, I'll right click and go to the properties and just confirm what I already know, which is it's connected by the sales order ID, which is appropriate for this particular example. I'll go ahead and click OK. And then I'm ready to begin visualizing. We want to show a visual that shows the total line amount for each sales order for each month by product line. And in Power BI Desktop, we use the Matrix tool to create this type of pivot. So I'll choose Matrix. And just like a pivot, I have rows, columns, and values to work with. Numbers are behind the scenes information for a visual, and I really can't start visualizing until I've taken a look at the numbers first. So I'll typically start with the matrix. All right, I'll go ahead and go to my sales 2020, and I'll bring in my product line. I'll bring that to my rows, and I'm looking month by month. So I'll expand order date, and because it's a date time field, it gives me a date hierarchy to work with. Now, this single data set is for 1 year, so I don't need to bring the year in. I just simply need to bring the month to columns. And as you can see, it's beginning to build my pivot display. Because they've requested we use the line total, I'll drag my line total to the values. Okay, go ahead and expand. Okay, I'll close my filters for now. I'm going to close my fields for now. Let's give me a little bit more screen space to look at. With all these numbers, it's actually hard to visualize what the top product line is based on the line total. So let's duplicate this page so we can play around with the visual and not lose our matrix. Let's go ahead and right-click page 1 and choose Duplicate Page. Now everything that was on page 1 is now duplicated into a duplicate of page 1. All right, let's go ahead and call this Artifacts. Just like duplicating a page, I can also duplicate visuals. I'll go ahead and right-click and copy this visual. And then on my Home tab, I can paste it. Okay, now I'll go ahead and play around with different options to visualize it. I'm going to start with a stacked column chart. And then in my visual, you'll notice that it took my product line and my order date and put them in the axis. I'm going to go ahead and move my product line to my legend. That way it'll highlight each one of the columns in each one of the product lines. So I can see the total of January and what part of January was made up by each product line. I don't hate this visual, but I also don't love it. I can't really see pretty clearly which product line is the top one. The orange and blue, they're pretty close. All right, so I'll choose my second copy of the matrix, and I'll try a line chart. I'll drag that product line down to the legend. Do you immediately see the S product line, the orange line at the top? Yes. Did you see that data as easily before? No. I'm not here to make the case for what type of visualization, but this is a prime example of one showing something a little bit better than the other. I can see all of my product lines and their performance month over month. Okay, let's hover over June, where we have a little bit of a dip. And then you'll notice that the visual pop-up comes up to tell me what are the actual values for each one of the months. Now, users don't necessarily know exactly where to hover, so it might be better to do just a little bit of formatting to make it a little bit easier to see. Okay, so I'll go over to my roller. And on my x-axis, where it shows the months, I'll go ahead and turn that title off. Watch month disappear. Again, it's obvious January through December are the months. Okay. Scroll down a little bit further and I'll go to Shapes. And I'll tell it to turn on the marker. The marker makes it easy to visualize where you might want to hover to see information. Okay, great. Now, I really love this visual, but after a feedback review, I've discovered that it only needs to show delivered products. Let me go put a hard filter on this visual. I'll go to Filters, and I see the filters on this visual. Automatically, it gives me filters for everything that makes up the visual, but I need the order status. I'll go to my Fields. I'll go to my order status, and I'll bring that in as a filter on this visual. And I'll check the box for delivered. Now, this is a hard-coded filter, meaning that it's going to always only show the delivered products. It'll still interact with the soft filters, which are slicers that we'll add later, but I'm hard-coding it to only show the delivered products. Okay, Let's go ahead and duplicate this visual again and adjust it so that we can see the returns. Okay, I'll go ahead and copy and paste. Here I'll adjust my visual to show my lost and returned products. Perfect. Now, for this one, instead of showing the product line, I do want to show the order status. So I'll close out that product line and I'll drop in my order status. Now I see the two lines that represent the order status of lost and returned. I want to see something similar for our back ordered objects. So again, I'll copy and paste this visual and I'll adjust that order status filter for the back orders. So these are the different artifacts that I want for my dashboard. Now I'm ready to sample out a dashboard. So I'll go ahead and create a page. I'll call this sample dashboard and I'll go copy. So I'll click. I'm holding control. I'll copy these and paste them onto my dashboard. I won't do a ton of sizing here, but I'll go ahead and move a few things around. Remember, formatting options will change based on the visual, and each object may have its own format options and even its own filters applied. From one matrix on artifacts, we've created 3 really nice visuals that let us explore the different parts of the sales order story for the company. There are any number of people that might consume your information on a dashboard, and you'll work with people that will only want visuals, and some who want numbers, and some who enjoy visuals and numbers. You can show tables with subtotals, or you can explore cards that are just cards or multi-cards. Let's start with a table, just to get our brains straight on the numbers before we start getting distracted by the visuals. Let's go over to our Artifacts tab. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to create some size to work with here. We're just going to size these down. Just giving us some room to work with. Okay, so I'm going to choose the table visualization. Okay, from our sales data, we want to focus on our products. So I'll drag product name. And again, I want to bring in the line total. Okay, and just close my filters. Now what I see is a list of all of my unique product names and the subtotal of the line totals. Okay, great. These are some pretty big numbers. What I would really like to see is what percentage they make up. So that's easy. I'll go to line total. I'll tell it to show the value as a percent of the grand total. All right, as we take a look, let's go take a copy of this visual. Let's put it on our sample dashboard. Immediately we see it doesn't really fit the style that we're going for. All right. So again, I'm going to just do some really basic sizing. I'm not going to get intricate yet. Just going to make room. Okay. I'm going to click on my visual. And I think what I want to attempt to do here is show a multi-card. So with my table selected, I'll click on the multi-row card. Definitely looks a little bit better. This list is long, and it requires me to scroll, which means it requires my users to scroll. So I'm going to go ahead and make some adjustments to the format. I'll go to my paint roller. I'll go ahead and turn my category label off. I don't need to see percent of grand total repetitively. I'll scroll down a little bit further. I'll go to my card. And I'll adjust that padding. Bring my padding down. Let's make it a 5 and see how that looks. Definitely better. Okay. All right. Might adjust my size of my card title font. Not 100% perfect, but definitely a little bit better, a little bit less scrolling for my user. Okay, now let me go to the three little dots at the right. First of all, I want you to note that by product name, it's sorted ascending, meaning it's going to just list them in alphabetical order. But for this dashboard to really give me information, I actually want it to sort by the grand total line percentage. This means when I look at this, it'll show me the highest lines first. Okay, I'll go ahead and make that ascending, and then I'll tell it to sort descending. Now, this particular sort will interact with my filters. So if I choose a particular month and there's a higher product for that particular month, it will automatically sort to the top. Let me go ahead and save my dashboard. Okay, let's go back over to our artifacts. So we replaced the table with a multi-row card. Perfect. Let's look at a regular card. I'll click on card and I'll bring in my line total. I'll drag it to my fields. And by default, it's set to sum, which is perfect. Okay. And then I actually want to go ahead and filter this again by the order status. So I'll drag that filter to this visual and show only my delivered products. Okay, I'll go ahead and do a little bit of formatting here. Turn my category off. I'll turn my title on. And this will be total delivered. And let's go ahead and center that over the top. Let's maybe make it a little bit larger. Okay. Adjust the size of my card there. Perfect. Now let me go copy this. Find a place to put it on my dashboard. I think I'm going to go ahead and put it over here on this right-hand side. So again, I'm not doing real crazy sizing yet. I think I'm going to place it right here. Awesome. Okay. Now I want to copy this visual again so that I can show a total for the returned, a total for the lost, and also a total for the back ordered. Okay, so I'll just copy the visual and paste it. And then I'll adjust my sizing. And then I'll adjust my filter for lost. And I'll go adjust my title. Total lost orders. I'll paste again. Set my status for returned. Go to my title. Total returned. Paste one more time. And do my total back ordered. Awesome. This gives me the flexibility of seeing the grand totals for each one of the main categories in the sales story. I can also see the performance of each product over time just by using multi-row cards and actual cards. I'll go ahead and save my dashboard here. Again, it's important to not spend a ton of time sizing and moving around because you've already seen we do a lot of shifting and movement as we put artifacts into place. Cards and multi-cards just give you another attractive way to build numbers into your dashboards to accommodate both the graphic version of the numbers as well as just the numbers. Slicers and filters allow us to look at the different data sets through various questions we might ask, like, how was January and how did May look, or how was first quarter? By default, all things filter all things on the dashboard, and it can produce some undesirable results. So let's take a look at our filter pane. And again, if we choose our total lost orders, we can see that it has a hard filter of lost. Also, the filter shape will show us that it's an order status that's set to lost. These are examples of hard filters. I want to work with some of the soft filters. Let's start by adding a slicer. I'll go to my visualizations. I'll make sure I have no visual selected, and I'll choose the slicer. And again, I want to use the order date, and I want to use the date hierarchy that's produced, and I'll choose just the month. Okay, great. This gives me a soft filter. I can click on January and see how my visuals update. I can click on February. Also, if I choose one of my visuals, I can see that now I'm filtered by lost, and I can see only my total lost orders. Okay, let me go back up top here and bring my information back. I'll clear my filters. Editing how the filters interact with the different visuals can definitely give you a more desirable dashboarding experience. Okay, so let me move a couple things around here. Again, we do a lot of moving and shifting. Okay, and I want to increase the size of my filter. Okay, great. Now this kind of gives me an idea of where I need to move my cards. Again, I'm just going to move them out of the way, and I'll clear that filter. Okay, one of the things that we want to do is we want to maintain this particular visual. We never want it to be filtered by our soft filters. So I'll do that by editing the interactions. I'll go to Format, and I'll choose Edit Interactions. Okay, I'm going to move this down just a little bit. I'll choose my slicer again. Okay, and then this is the little object I'm looking for. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I want to turn this off, tell it none. So I have my slicer selected, and I've told this one not to filter. I feel the same way about these. I'll go ahead and mark these as none. Okay, perfect. Now I'll go ahead and choose this one. And if anything is selected on this particular visual, I don't want it to impact any other visual. So I'll go ahead and mark none on all of my different objects. Okay, great. Okay. If I choose any objects here, I want it to not impact my cards. And same thing here. Okay, I think I've got it. So I'll turn my interactions off. Sort of move things around. Okay, so now if I click on April, the only things that should update are my cards. Okay, let's test our grand total sort here. So I've got helmet red at 11.35% in January. And in February, I see it did actually interact and move my helmet blue, which would be the top for that month. Okay, let me click on visual here. Oh, I missed one. I can see that my total delivered is blank. Let me go back to my edit interactions. Okay, and just move this out just a little bit so I can work with it. Yep, there it is. I'll go ahead and choose none. And I bet that's going to be the same for all of my interactions. Perfect. Okay, now I'll go move it back into place. Let's try that again. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay. So now the only thing that really makes any interaction is my slicer, which is appropriate. Awesome. This is definitely an area where you want to test. You have to move objects around sometimes to get to its filter shape or tell it not to interact. There's no single answer for how you should filter or not filter your data. But as you can see, there are plenty of filter options and interactions that can be supplied to the dashboard. making it easier for people to interact with it and feeling confident that they didn't break something just by choosing a filter. One of the final steps before you publish your visuals for consumption is to get things sized and set before you publish. This is where you can do all that intricate sizing and alignment. If you haven't had any graphic design training, you may never have experienced grids and line support, but these are valuable layout features. If you go to your View tab, you'll notice that you have grid lines, snap to grid, and lock objects. That way you can lock them and they're not going to move as you move things around. Let's go back over to our Home tab. All right, I'll go ahead and collapse my visuals and my fields pane. Okay, and then I'm going to drag that line title by month. And then you notice the little red sizing. It lets me know where I'm at in my layout. This is perfect. I've got a little bit more room here, so I'm going to drag it over to my grid. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and size. Again, I'm using those grid lines to help me. And bring it down, maybe size this one a little bit bigger. Leverage that space that I have. And again, these are why we save these for the final steps. Okay, I want them to be exactly aligned, so I'm going to Control select all three of them. I'll go to my format, align, and align these by their leftmost point. Okay, perfect. I know I'm good to go there. Okay, total delivered, lost orders, total return, and back order. I want to make sure I have equal space vertically. So I'll go to my format, I'll go to align, and I'll distribute them vertically. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and save our work. Now I'm ready to publish. So the very first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and save this as a production file. That way I can go ahead and remove my artifacts. Okay, I'll go ahead and do file. I'll do save as. Okay, we're going to call this one production. I'll go ahead and eliminate these tabs. Call it sales dashboard. And I'll go ahead and clear this filter here. Okay, and save my work. Now, there's multiple ways to distribute this information. One, you can go ahead and export it as PDF. So I'll go to File, Export, and I can choose Export to PDF. And that'll take this particular file and give me a PDF version of it. So I'll go ahead and do Export to PDF. And now I can see my Adobe PDF. Now, PDFs, of course, are printed, and they're not going to be interactive, okay? But I can email them. All right, I'll go ahead and close this. I can use that utility to share feedback and gain feedback from my decision makers. Every tool that publishes to the web publishes a little bit differently, but they're all doing the same thing. I'm taking it from my application in my desktop environment and putting it into the web-based portal. I'll go ahead and choose Publish. I'll select my workspace, and it'll start the publishing process. Remember that what you can do to share and publish and where you can publish is also dictated by your licensing structure within your organization. One of the additional features of Power BI is that not only will it allow me to publish to the web and to my workspace, but it'll also give me some quick insights into my data. So when I send data up, it'll give me some visuals to look at and explore. All right, I'll go ahead and click on Open My Sales Dashboard. And then this takes me to the web-based version of Power BI. And I can begin to interact with my dashboard. There's another feature I love about Power BI and the web, and that's the ability to export my dashboard page to a PowerPoint. I'll go to Export, and I'll choose PowerPoint. I'll work with my current values. I'll tell it to only export the current page if that's appropriate. And then I'll choose export. And it will begin to build a PowerPoint slide for me that I can use in presentations or as part of other meetings. Okay, now that my PowerPoint is done, this PowerPoint is actually interactive. So if I click, it will actually try to launch me to the dashboard. Just keep that in mind. It also includes information on when it was last refreshed. Okay, let me run my PowerPoint show. I can see when it was last refreshed, and I can see when it was downloaded. And if I want to view it in Power BI, I can do that. It's great when your permissions will allow you to share different report options from your dashboard. Remember, if you have the free Power BI license at your organization, then at a minimum, you can publish it to the Power BI app online, and at least to your workspace. Your sharing options are dependent upon the licenses that are assigned to you and are available to you within your organization. When you publish your Power BI desktop, you have the ability to export it to PowerPoint. And remember, at any time in the process, directly from Power BI desktop, you can publish it to PDF. These are easy ways to share the non-interactive components of your dashboard as you're in the process of building them. Here's our challenge. We want to include information to our existing sales product dashboard on products. Our goal for this page of our dashboard are to highlight those products, how many in quantity were ordered. We also want to draw focus to what the top ordered products are, what products are getting returned, what products are getting lost, and what products are back ordered. There are several ways to explore this data through visuals. When you're designing, it's important to imagine that you're the decision maker for this scenario, and ultimately, you start out defining what is the right way to show the product information. Our goal is to bring a valid first draft to the actual decision maker that gives them insight into the products and their order statuses. This challenge will take you anywhere from 10 minutes or more to complete. Okay, let me show you how I would approach this challenge of bringing focus to highlight our products. Okay, the very first thing I'm going to do is actually add a new page, and I'll name this my products dashboard. Okay, I'm actually going to copy the visual here where we already are highlighting our product name and the grand total of the line. So I'll go ahead and copy this visual, and I'll go to my products dashboard and go ahead and paste that in. Now, we want to highlight the quantity versus the total. So I'll go ahead and remove that grand total line total, and I'll grab my order quantity. Okay, and I'm going to see a grand total percentage, and it's highlighting and focused alphabetically on the product name. So I'll go ahead and adjust my sort. I actually want to sort by the grand total order quantity. Okay, and I actually want to go ahead and sort that descending. So it looks like we order the water bottles more than anything else. Okay, so I'll know what are our top order products because of the sort order. And I didn't have to do any of the formatting that I did with the sales dashboard because I've just copied that visual. Now, one thing that's lost in this quantity is actually the price of each one of these items. So again, I'll go ahead and copy this visual and I'll paste it. Okay, and instead of grand total of the order quantity, I'm actually going to go ahead and choose the list price. Okay, and by default, it's going to sum. Okay, and I'll just go ahead and show don't summarize. This gives me the actual price. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and sort this by the list price. And it's going to sort it lowest price to highest price. Okay, perfect. So now I see what we order the most of, and I see each cost. So now I want to visualize the back orders, the lost, and the returned. So I'll go ahead and create my matrix so I can look at the data. That's always important for me. All right, and I'll go ahead and put my product name into my rows. Okay, and I'll go ahead and grab my order status and put that into the columns. Okay, and we're working with the quantity, so I'll go ahead and drag that order quantity into values. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and filter because I don't want to see the delivered, right? I'm really wanting to focus on what's been back ordered, lost, or returned. So I'll go to my filters here, and I'll go ahead and hard code that filter to only show me back order, lost, and returned. Okay, perfect. So these are the numbers that I want to work with. So now I'm going to attempt to visualize it. Again, at this point, not really sure what's going to be the best way to visualize this data, so I'm going to just make some choices. I'm going to go ahead and do a 100% stacked column. Go ahead and drag the order status to my legend. It's a little bit hard to read, and I notice everything else is vertical here, so I'm actually going to swap this over to a stacked bar. And immediately I can see just from the visual here that this road tire here, let me go give myself some more visual space. Yeah, so I'd go ahead and start exploring. Okay, well, here's the HL road tire. See if I can find it on my list here. We order very few of them. They're $29.99, so there's towards the higher part of our cost. And it looks like we're losing a lot of them. So this would be a good first draft to bring to my decision maker. I do want to make those percentages stand out a little bit, so I'll go ahead and click my format. And then I can make some adjustments here. Okay, I think I'll leave my order quantity and my product name here. Let's just see. Yeah, I want to leave that on. I'll just drop that title. And I don't need to adjust any of the padding because I can see all of my options here. Okay, great. Scroll down and choose my data labels. Go ahead and turn those on. And maybe I'll make them a little bit bigger. Makes them a little bit easier to see. Okay, great. All right, and I'll go ahead and adjust my sizing. I've got plenty of room here. I don't want to lose my scroll. So I'm going to just size this in. I'm going to make this as wide as possible. Okay, and then I'm going to actually go back to my format. Go to my title here. Now the title is order quantity by product name and order status. So I think I'm actually going to label this back ordered, lost, and returned based on ordered quantity. Okay, and then go here and add a little text box. Let's do products by grand total percentage ordered. And then, I didn't mean to go to focus mode. Let me come back here. Let me copy this box. And let's do products by price, low to high. Go ahead and size that. I believe this is a good first draft to take to my decision maker. There are a million ways to approach this challenge and different ways to visualize this data, but I think this is a good starting point. Okay, let's go have it reviewed. We are all looking for ways to save time, and learning your data is one area where you can save time if you leverage the tools that are available to you. In Power Query, either through Excel or Power BI, you will find a few options on the View tab that are worth exploring, and they'll help you learn your data. Let's go ahead and connect our wage data to Power Query. I'll go to Data. I'll choose Table or Range. I'll go ahead and choose OK. One of the very first things I want to point out to you is on the bottom left-hand side. We already know that we have 22 columns and 343 rows. And then I want you to note that column profile is based on the top 1,000 rows. If I want to look at the entire data set for profiling, I can simply choose that option by clicking column profiling and choosing the entire data set. Since this entire data set is under 1,000 rows, I can leave it at the default. Now, you've probably noticed that each one of the columns, when you bring it into Power Query, actually has a green bar. This is actually showing you the column quality, and it requires you to hover over each one. Okay, so let's go ahead and close our query settings because we're not going to make any transformations and go to the View tab. If I want to look at the column quality in one sweep, meaning I don't want to hover over each one, I can simply check the column quality. Immediately, I see in the question for what is your current age, I have an empty value, meaning someone did not fill out their age when they completed this survey. Okay, I'll go ahead and uncheck column quality. Okay, I also want to take a look at column profile. I love this feature. I'll choose column profile, and one of the very first things I'm going to notice down below is that I have the count, which is 343, also equivalent to my record count. And then I have some basic stats. I also see the value distribution. Now, it's not as meaningful on a column like respondent ID that's a unique identifier for each record. But when I go to what is your current age, it gets a little bit more meaningful. Here I can see immediately that 25 to 34-year-olds filled this survey out more than any other age range. If I want to see the degree status, I can click what is your highest level of education, and immediately I can see people who have a bachelor's degree completed this survey more than any other type of degreed status. As a matter of fact, I can really take a look and see that people with some college or some form of degree really are the majority of the people who completed this survey. Okay, I'll go ahead and uncheck column profile. Let me show you a little trick. All right, so I'm going to do my column profile. I'm going to choose my three little dots, and then I'll choose my copy by option. I'll go to my home tab. I'll choose close and load. Now what this does is actually copies that information for that particular question, and then I can paste those values onto the sheet. Now this doesn't update live with my data. However, it does give me the current counts based on my survey response. So if I'm doing quick and dirty analytics, this is a really easy way to get counts without having to perform any other actions to provide the same values. If you're new to data, it might be hard to appreciate the value of these tools, giving you options like column profile. But if you've been at it for a while, you can immediately realize the time savings when using these options, and especially when you get asked questions for those quick and dirty analytics. People will often compile their data together, meaning they'll put all of their data sets into a single data set before they start leveraging tools like Power Query. I want to introduce you to the append data function by using folders. When we append data, what that really means is we're just compiling it all together. Let's say that every day we get a new set of data. Every day we get that data dump, we add it to the main data set we received. For some people, this means copying and pasting it to the bottom of a data set that they're using for all their calculations or pivots. In queries, when you append, you're just copying it from one location to another. They're called append queries. And although this is not the only way to accomplish a single data set from a group of data sets, it's very simple to perform. Let's take a look at our data folder inside our chapter exercise files. We have 3 rounds of data, but they're all the same structure, same field headings. So what we want to do is we want to go over to our append data set and bring all 3 rounds into Power Query to create a single data set of wage survey information. So what I'll do is I'll go to my Data tab, I'll go to Get Data, I'll choose From File, and then I'll choose From Folder. This will allow me to point to that data folder where all of my data lives. I'll go ahead and browse to that. I'll choose that data, I'll click OK, and then I'll choose OK again. It reads every file that's in that folder, and then it gives me a few options at the bottom. I want to go ahead and choose Combine, and I'll go ahead and do Combine and Transform Data so I can explore the data a little bit. Now, it's asking me what sample file to use, so I'll choose that first file, and I'll click Survey. Again, it's important to note that all files in this data set have the same structure, meaning they all have a respondent ID, they all have the race and ethnicity, they all have the gender. Okay, I'll go ahead and click OK. And then like magic, it combines all of those files from the folder, and it gives me the source name so I know exactly where those records come from. If your data might have duplicates, this would be a perfect time to go ahead and remove those duplicates. Just adding that step in. All right, let's go ahead and choose Close and Load. And then you see we have our 343 data rows loaded, and then we see all of the information that Power Query uses to create this append query for us. Now, when we go through these steps and our data is compiled together this way, when we get the next round of wage survey data, we just simply put it into the data folder, we refresh our Power Query file, and it will automatically read that data into this single data set. Using append on a folder allows you to not have to complete those appends on a one-by-one basis or even do it outside of Power Query before you ever start working with it in Power Query. This can be a huge time saver when you receive your data this way. Two of my favorite commands in Power Query is the duplicate and reference command. This allows me to use one source dataset and create smaller, focused datasets to work with. Let's go ahead and open up our data into Power Query. I'll choose from Table Range. Okay, I'll go expand my queries, and the very first thing I want to do is go ahead and name this Wage Survey. Perfect. So a duplicate is purely independent of the other data set, meaning if I make changes in the data set like deleting columns or replacing values, they'll not impact the duplicated data. If you reference a data set, it will in fact carry over all the changes you make, but this is easier to understand if you see it in action. So I'll go ahead and right-click Wage Survey and choose Duplicate. And it gives me Wage Survey 2. I'm going to go ahead and rename this as Wage Survey. I'll add duplicate. Now I'll go ahead and choose my columns for this sample set. I'll uncheck Select. I'll do Respondent ID. I'll do what is your current age and your highest level of education. And how do you classify your employment. All right, I'll do OK. So now I'm using the original wage survey data. I've created a duplicate. But now that I see these columns, if I scroll over, I see I have 4 columns. Okay. But when I go back to my wage survey, I still have all of my columns in place. All right, let me show you what it looks like to reference. I'm going to right click and reference the wage survey. And this one I'm going to rename and add the word reference. So now if I make changes in the main wage survey, they'll carry over to the wage survey reference. This can be a valuable cleaning aspect. If I make changes to the wage survey reference, they don't write back to the original. All right, so let's look at it this way first. I'm going to go to wage survey, and I know for what is my current age, I want to change that 65 plus to be 65 and older. So I'll go ahead and right click and replace values. And anywhere it says 65 plus, I'm going to change it to read 65 or older. And when I click OK, I see that 65 or older. When I check my duplicate, I'm still going to see that 65 plus. But when I see my reference, I see that that actually carried over. Okay, so here I want to choose my columns. I'm going to unselect all. I'm going to choose these first few options, and I'll click OK. So notice that I have 7 columns left. If I scroll over, I see the 7 columns for this reference. And when I go to wage survey, I still have my original set. So anything that I change in the columns that remain in wage survey reference in the wage survey will absolutely carry over. But I still get to work with this as an independent data set. Now I'll go ahead and choose close and load. And then I see each one of my new data sets. Okay, so I'm on sheet 3, which is my reference. If I click on sheet 2, it immediately highlights wage survey duplicate on the right. If I go to sheet 1, that shows me my original wage survey data. And then, of course, I have my actual source data on the survey tab. Okay, I'll go back over to sheet 3. The choice you make with a decision like this is solely based on what you're trying to achieve. There's some time savers when you reference a data set, but working with a duplicate, again, you may have to re-clean certain things. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish to which option you want to choose. One of the biggest challenges we face as data analysts is the inability to get to all of the raw data that we need. Source systems will sometimes limit you to the pre-built reports that are exported to PDF or Excel. These reports are canned reports, and they're generated by the system internally. These canned reports can be valuable, but we want to extend what we can do with them in other visualizations. We really need them to function more as records than pivot displays. In our research team, we often refer to this format as a wide format. Again, there are limitations in the visuals if you leave your data in the wide format. One of the key cleaning commands of Power Query is unpivot. Power Query gives us the ability to take wide displays and create long displays that act as records. We unpivot them, giving us a valuable record set to work with. Unpivot exists in Power Query for any data set, and you can unpivot Excel data or even PDFs. Let's go ahead and get started and unpivot our data. I'll go to Get Data. I'll choose from Excel. I'll choose my Unpivot Data Start, and I'll go ahead and open it. I'll go ahead and select my pivot data, and then I'll go straight to Transform Data. Okay, I'll just sweep through the data real quick. And one of the things that I see is that it produces a null value for a month where a customer didn't order anything. I really actually want that to be a 0. So I'll go ahead and highlight January. I'll scroll over to December, hold my Shift key. I'll go to replace my values and change that null to a 0. If I want to create a total, then I can create a total from all of my months. But what I don't want to do is have my total year come in and actually inflate my totals. I'll go ahead and remove that total year. Okay, scroll over and take a look. All right, I'll go ahead and choose close and apply and look at the fields. What you see in the pivot data fields is that each month has its own column header. This makes visualizing this data almost impossible, or it does create some limitations. It would be better to have a single field that represents the month and then the value that's associated with it. This is where Unpivot comes in. All right, I'll go to Transform Data. Okay, I'll go ahead and highlight my January. Hold my Shift key and highlight December. I'll right-click and choose Unpivot Columns. This creates two new column headers for me. Attribute, which is the original name of the column header, and Value, which was the value underneath that column. I'll go ahead and change Attribute to read Month, Month Name, and Value is actually the amount ordered. All right, perfect. I want to make sure that I don't have any blanks in the customer names. Perfect, I'm good. I'll go ahead and click OK. I'll choose Close and Apply. And now I see I have my three column headers: customer name, month name, and amount ordered. This will allow me to stack those displays. All right, so let me go ahead and bring my month name into my legend, my customer name to my axis, and my amount ordered. Okay, let me hide those. This display would not be possible had I not unpivoted the data. I could have layered and stacked all of the information and played around with it in an inefficient method, but Unpivot is a winner for all data analysts. If you're a new analyst, be glad you're starting now with tools capable of doing this. And if you're an existing analyst, you will immediately appreciate how powerful the Unpivot command can be. There are multiple reasons why we need to be able to custom sort. We want to be able to control the way our data is sorted, and sometimes it's not as simple as alphabetical or even numeric sorting. We want to control that. So in order to do that, we can create a custom table and sort data any way we choose. In our example here, we have April through September, and that's because it's formatted as text, and so it's not date specific. Otherwise, it would be sorted January through December. You'll notice that in our sort, it's sorted alphabetically by the first letter of the month. That's because it doesn't recognize this as actual month data. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and bring in a custom sort table so we can control all of that. What I want to do is go ahead and go to Transform Data. Okay, I'll go ahead and add a new source of data. And I'll bring in my sort table. I'll check my sorting table that has my month name and my sort number, and I'll click OK. Now, what I want to do now is go to my pivot data, and I want to actually merge that sorting column in. So I'll use a merge query for that. I'll go ahead and do merge queries. I'll tell it to merge with my sorting. I'll tell my month name to match my month name, and I have an exact match, which is perfect. I'll click OK. I'll go ahead and expand sorting, and I really only need that sort number. All right, I'll click OK there, and I'll go ahead and close and apply. Okay, I'm not done yet. I'm going to go to the data view, and I'll choose my month name, and I'll tell it to sort by column, sort number. Okay, and I'll go ahead and sort that ascending. Okay, I'll go to my reporting tab. Automatically, I have my January through December. You can leverage a custom sort table to sort your data any way you need it for your reporting purposes. Remember, you're not just limited to alphabetical sorts or even numerical sorts. You can control it with a sort table anytime. Here's the challenge. When we're working with our wage survey data and we use the education information in our visuals, we actually want it to be sorted by the education as it is attained. What I mean is, we go to high school, then to college, and we obtain different levels of education. And we want our data visuals to be sorted by that order. If we have different ages, for example, we wouldn't expect an 18-year-old to have achieved a doctorate. We also want to address the data so that when we did not have an answer provided for age or education, that we can have something other than blank show in the visuals. Maybe no answer provided. We have the sort file in our challenge folder. It has the sort information already set. This challenge can range anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to complete. Let me show you how I would attack this challenge. Again, I want to be able to see the order of attainment for the education, and I also want to address these blanks. The very first thing I'm going to do is go to my transform data. Okay, and I'll give myself some screen space. Okay, so anywhere there is a current age or level of education that has not been completed, I'm going to actually go replace those values to be no answer provided. I've used my control key to select those. I'll choose my replace values. Everywhere there is a null, I'll do no answer provided. And I'll go ahead and click OK. Okay, I'll go ahead and do close and apply. And I'll definitely see those blanks. Perfect. No answer provided. No answer provided. Again, it's sorted here in age from the number all the way up to the age, 65. So this sort is fine. It's the bachelor degree, master degrees, some college. We really want it to be in order. So I'm going to actually go grab some more data. So I'll go to transform data. I'll grab a new source of data. I'll grab my sheet that has my education sorts. I'll go ahead and check that box there. Perfect. I'll go ahead and click OK. All right, now what I need to do is merge my sort order in with my wage survey. All right, so I'll go to my wage survey. Go ahead and size my screen so I can see just a little bit more. Okay, I'll go to my merge queries. So I just want to add that field. Okay, I'm going to work with the highest level of education. Choose my sort. Perfect. I look and notice that everything matches up. That's great. Show me everything from wage, where there's a match for sort, and all of them sort together. Perfect. And then from here, I only need the sort order. All right, I'll go ahead and click OK. I'll do my close and apply. Now, I'm going to go to my data. I'll go to my wage survey. I'm going to sort my highest level of education. I'm going to sort it based on my sort order. And I'll go back to my report. Okay, I'm going to sort it by my highest level of education. And then now I notice it's sorted by master's degree, bachelor's degree. Let me actually adjust it. I'll do sort ascending. Now it follows, we have some high school diploma, vocational, some college, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, and then the master's degree. I'll go ahead and size this. Okay, that's how I would address the custom sort on education. The most important piece of advice I can give on presenting data is this: don't forget that you know the data and your audience may not. They haven't had the same amount of time with the data that you've had. They haven't spent days validating and creating charts and pivot tables. Remember, you're going to always need to prime them with a little information up front. Data that is being presented, especially in short bits of time that's considered high volume or mission critical, should always include some primer information before any new piece of information is given. If I'm about to show a key variable and how it impacts the information, but I didn't define how I got that variable, then I'm in trouble from the very start. The whole time they should be thinking of what I'm telling them, they're instead going to be wondering, how did she get that variable? Because I've never seen it. Not only will this distract from the presentation, but it'll also cause them to have questions that take away from the key points or even eat up the amount of time you have to go further. Always include standard definitions of the data right up front. For example, when I study children in K through 12, I create what's called cohorts, and I always define what I mean by cohort before I present any further information. I clearly state how the children are defined into that cohort, the number of children or records that are in that cohort, and any other necessary definition so they can go ahead and check that off in their brain. That way, they can focus on the insights I'm giving them about the data in the sample versus the questions I could have answered up front. Your studies will be different. You might be defining the products that are included or even excluded from your data. You may be talking about a different division or even a different department. You might be talking about historical data or current data. You might include time periods of focus, but in any case, you should always define your data and the variables you're using. I'm also very intentional to think over things that might help people to absorb the information at the pace I'm required to deliver it. And whatever that is, it will be included. It never hurts to run through your presentation with a peer or a colleague to give you clarity on what you may not realize needs explaining or defining because you already understand it. And when I have the luxury of sending materials ahead to the audience, I can address some of those items in a simple document. I still highlight it again in the presentation, but then tell them to refer back to that information later as needed. In this course, we've talked about ad hoc reporting, those one-time or one-off requests that come to your desk. However, there are times when you have reports or dashboards that will be consumed by the organization or by larger groups. There are some key things to take into account when you're getting ready to go live within your organization. You always want to identify your audience. Who's actually going to be using the dashboards or reports? Is it internal people in the organization, like employees or executives, or is it external, like customers or potential clients? Also, be sensitive to the branding guidelines. Are there branding guidelines for externally facing content? If you've never worked with a marketing department and you have no idea, here's your opportunity to explore this. Internally, you may have executives who request everything fit a certain style standard. For example, we support an organization that has requirements for everything that is around their brand, from their email signature to their font usage. We have a copy of those brand standards and we follow it for the colors, fonts, logos, and everything we produce for them. With permissions, this could get really complicated really quick, and it really almost should have been top of this list. Who actually gets to access this data? And more importantly, who doesn't? Whether a group has access to the files or the dashboard or even a PowerPoint version, you must make sure that everywhere the output lives, that only the appropriate people have permissions. One way we support this particular effort is we have a SharePoint site that's dedicated to reporting, and we have the permission set so that people only get into the areas in which they have permissions. It's an extra layer of permission and it's worth it. But that's just one example. And again, you're controlled by the licenses that are given to everyone or not given to everyone in the organization. So let's talk about that. Every tool has licensing that controls what you can do with your published output or access to the files. For example, you might want to share a report with a person who only wants to view the work, but you have to ensure they have the right license to do that. If they don't, then you can share that report with them all day and get nowhere. You might want to leverage QR codes, but unless everyone has the minimum licensing requirement, it's a waste of time to provide that. You may not be in control of the licensing for your organization. That's typically handled by the IT department and other decision makers. But you need to be able to communicate upfront what constraints you face with the licensing that you do have. This will allow the decision makers to make a decision on the types of licenses that you might need or that your organization needs. Also, you'll need to determine if any of the output needs to be emailed out or if there's any other notification requirements. Example would be that we have a paginated report, and this gets emailed out every day to the sales team. Our notification is the fact that the email goes out with the report attached. But we also have a dashboard that, due to the limitations of the data, it causes us to have to refresh the data every morning. So we have to notify everyone that the dashboard is refreshed. Always consider the email and notification requirements of every report you build. And understand there's not a single answer every time. You'll have to address it on a case-by-case basis. Training guidance is so valuable. People don't naturally know how to use a dashboard to answer their own queries or questions. Be sure to spend a little time building some training guidance on how to get the most out of the dashboard. Minimum required training would be at least how to access the file, dashboard, or paginated report. Who is the file meant for? Who is it meant to support? And what is the best use of the file, dashboard, or report? I would also include any key definitions that might support the consumer's understanding of the information. Until you have this simple checklist memorized, or so that you don't have to, I would recommend creating a checklist that contains all of these main areas and be sure to include it at the beginning of every discussion for an organization-wide report and maybe even every ad hoc request. I've been in so many meetings thinking to myself, why is the analyst actually presenting this information inside the tool they use to create it? I know that seems like the right thing to do, and it definitely will show off all you can do with an amazing dashboard. But what it really becomes is a show of, look what I can do. And the executives, they're never going to remember the data. They're not going to remember how to use the dashboard, but they will remember you dancing around in the tools. Sometimes it's more compelling to show a non-moving picture of information so people can gain understanding of what they're looking at before they start driving around in a dashboard. I found in meetings when we have less than an hour to present information, it also helps us stay focused on the information if we leverage tools like PowerPoint. I might have an amazing dashboard that will be public for everyone to consume, but when presenting it for the first time, I'm typically using a PowerPoint presentation that's easy to digest. You learned earlier in Power BI when you publish to your workspace, you can then export that PowerPoint to build an amazing presentation that can be used during the meeting. Let me show you some of the tricks that I use. First off, I'm going to go ahead and go to my second slide. And when I hover over, you notice that it is actually linked to the live version of this in Power BI. I'm going to go ahead and right-click and remove that link. I don't want to accidentally jump there during the middle of my presentation. And if someone else is presenting my information, I don't want to accidentally send them there either. I'm going to go ahead and actually right-click and duplicate this slide. That way I can work with this particular information and actually set it up to teach people how to use this. If I'm presenting this month's numbers, this may be all I need to do. But if I'm introducing a new dashboard to them, then I'm going to leverage PowerPoint as a teaching tool. And as you already know, there is a lot of valuable learning in this library on effective presentations and also how to gain PowerPoint skills. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and actually right-click slide 2, and I'll duplicate it. This is one of my favorite tricks. I want to draw attention to how to use the filters. So what I'm going to do is go to my Insert. I'll go to my Shapes. I'll choose a shape. And I'm going to draw right over on top of my information. Now, this covers up my information entirely. What I really want to do is adjust the transparency. I'm going to right-click that shape I just created, and I'm going to go to Format Shape. In the Fill section, I'm going to actually adjust the transparency. And this will be a preference. Now, I'm bringing it over just a little bit. I'll put it on about 30. This way, the user sees that information is still there, but I'm actually highlighting this information here on the right. Okay, now, to me, this is really not enough. I'm going to do just a little bit more here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and highlight my picture on my slide 2. I'm going to right-click it and copy it. I'll go back to my slide 3. I'm going to paste that picture in. I'll do Control V for that. Now I'll leverage crop. I'll go to Picture Format. I'll choose my crop tool. I'm going to crop right to the month. I'll choose crop. And I'll drag it out just a little bit here. I need to crop it just a little bit more. Perfect. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and insert another shape. I'll use a double-sided arrow. Go ahead and change that color. Maybe go ahead and change that thickness a little bit. Okay, and then I'll insert a text box. And in this text box, I'll tell them you can filter for each month or hold Control for multiple months. Okay, I'll go ahead and center that. I'll go ahead and make that text bigger. Go ahead and make it bold. Okay, great. Now, this allows me to teach them about the filters. Okay, I'll go ahead and duplicate my slide again, and I'll bring it down. Also, I want to talk about the sorting that occurs in this multi-card. Again, what you highlight on your presentation will be specific to your dashboard. But again, I can leverage the same tool. I can go to Insert and Shape. I can bring my shape over, and now I can highlight over the top of this one. I can bring my transparency to think I did 30 on the last one, so I'll just key it in there. Okay, I'll go ahead and insert another shape. This time I want to use this bracket shape. Okay, and I'm going to change the color of that. Go ahead and change the weight of it. And then I'll go insert my text box. And note that this will sort to the highest number based on filters applied. Okay, and then again, I'll go ahead and make everything bigger. And let's make this bold. Okay, I think I'm going to adjust my transparency just a little bit more here. Actually, let's bring it. Let's make it less transparent. That way those values stick out. All right, perfect. Okay, and then I'm going to do one last tweak here. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this slide. I'll drag it down. And then I want to draw focus to this center area. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm now going to go crop. Just going to crop out each one of these sides here. And this will allow me to draw focus on this information when I'm talking about the importance of it to when they're using the dashboard. Okay, now let's go ahead and run this show and take a look at it. I'll go to my slideshow. I'll run it from the beginning. And then I can go through and I can walk them through each part of the dashboard. Also, when they walk through this dashboard by themselves, you can provide them this PowerPoint presentation and they can be more effective at giving you feedback or even finding their own answers. Remember, our goal as data analysts is not to show what we know about a fancy data tool, but to show what we've discovered in the data. You can leverage PowerPoint to share the value of your newly developed dashboard, making it easier for your users to work with it and also adopt the tool and the form of reporting that a dashboard will give us. Have you ever been left with no step-by-step or real instruction on how to work with a file? There are several reasons why processes pass to others. Maybe it's because they've moved up or even moved on. Either way, sometimes we've been left to diagnose and understand what the original owner did with the file, to query it or report on it to get to their end states. The other most common scenario is that the process has worked for so long that either the person doesn't remember or, again, they're not available, and sometimes you're that person. My recommendation is don't be the person who leaves a process without being documented. Again, it may very well be you who returns to it years later. And again, we don't fix what isn't broken. So when we do have to fix it, we don't want to re-remember our own work. Let me introduce you to the Steps Recorder. This is built into Windows. I'll go to my Windows menu. I'll type Steps. I'll go to the Steps Recorder. Now, we'll choose to start recording. And every time we click, it will capture a screenshot. So I just clicked on the label. And now I want to change the sort order. I'll go ahead and click there and you'll see the little red dot. I'm going to change this from a 4, change this to a 3, and then I'll go ahead and save my work. If I wanted to add a comment, I could just simply click Add Comment and highlight my screen and list a comment wherever appropriate. Now that I'm done, I can choose Stop Record. This produces a file, and this file will allow me to review those screenshots and list what I've done. Now, it's not the most elegant documentation, but it is definitely documentation. I'll go ahead and choose Save. I'll save this into my exercise files as my custom sorts for my report, and then I'll go ahead and choose Save. Also, I found that people are unaware that you can do some basic documentation just using a Word document and the screenshot tool. Let me show you what I mean. I'll go ahead and bring up a Word document. Okay, and I'll go ahead and type custom sorts are controlled by the sort file in the reporting data folder. To change the sort, adjust the sort order column. To add a new item, add to the list, and add its sort number. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and my insert tab, I'll go to screenshot, and then in available windows, I see my actual Excel file because I opened it and worked with it earlier. I can also do a screen clipping if I want to screen clip it. All right, so I'll go ahead and click my available window. And then this shows me my actual sort. I'll go ahead and save this as how to sort values. It is so simple with the tools readily available that we can easily document information while it's still fresh on our minds. When you combine this with other best practices, you'll not only be considered a data wizard, but the company hero. My personal approach is always leave it better than how you found it. Here's our challenge. We want to take the product dashboard that we created earlier, and you can use the PowerPoint in your challenge files. We want to highlight some of the information on our PowerPoint so that when we're teaching people how to use our dashboard, they'll have an idea of what to expect. This is an easy way to lay out and let people know how to consume the information on the dashboard. Use all the techniques you learned in the previous videos. I love a good PowerPoint challenge. Okay, I will maintain this product page here, but I do want to change this. Make it introducing the product dashboard. How about that? Okay, then I'll go here. I'll go ahead and actually get rid of my notes. And I want to remove this link so that when I copy this file, it doesn't always copy that link. Now that link is valuable, but it's also on that product page. So I'll go ahead and remove link. Super important too, if someone else is presenting this, you don't want them to accidentally go to Power BI during the presentation. All right, I'll go ahead and copy and paste. Okay, now let me come up. I want to highlight some different components of the dashboard. So I want to draw focus to this left-hand side. All right, I'm going to go ahead and keep the full dashboard. Go to my next slide. And here I'll do my insert. I'll go ahead and add a shape. I'll go ahead and highlight across those. I don't want to completely blank them out. I just want to be able to draw focus. So I'm going to right click, go to that format shape, and then adjust my transparency. Of course, now this is just personal, but I like people to know that there's stuff underneath there, right? It helps them to draw focus to this one area. All right, I'm going to go back and insert. I'll do a little bracket shape here. And the shape and size, completely up to you. Okay, I'm going to go adjust that outline, make it just a little bit bigger. And I do want to make the color stand out just a little bit. So I'll make that orange. All right, I'm going to zoom in. Just bring that in just a little bit. Okay, perfect. All right, and then I'm going to insert another text box. And I'll make that a solid fill. And I'll say this shows quantity, ordered, and the grand total percentage of what's been ordered over time. It is sorted by highest to lowest GT percentage. All right, now go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. Go ahead and center that. Okay, great. All right, I'm going to go ahead and copy this shape and I'm going to apply it over here. Let me zoom back out. And this I'm going to move it so that I can draw focus to this list. I'm just going to capitalize on what I've already created here. Go ahead and copy and paste that over. Work with my sizing. Now this actually is going to show, this shows the cost of each. Let me do list price because that's the actual field I use. This shows the list price of each product and is sorted lowest to highest price. And again, I want to insert my bracket shape. Okay, I'm going to change that color, make it a little bit heavier so it stands out. All right, I think here I can, there we go. Might need to size just a little bit. Okay, great. All right, let me go copy this one more time and paste down below. All right, let me go grab my shape and I'm going to change my transparency again. I'm in that format shape box. Okay, and then I'll again copy this, paste it. Just my sizes there. Perfect. And then I'll insert my text box. Go ahead and give that a solid white fill. Go ahead and make it centered. This stacked bar shows only items that are back ordered, lost, or returned. It shows the percentage of each product and its status. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and increase the size of that. There we go. Okay, and if I want it to stand out just a little bit more, I can actually go in and adjust that formatting of this box. Let me go ahead and give it a shape outline. Use that same shape outline color that I used for my lines. Okay, great. Let me just give it a quick review. Shows the whole dashboard, shows each component of the dashboard, allowing me to present it. Okay, great. I'll go ahead and save my work, and that completes this challenge. After going through the foundations and the application for data analysis, I often get asked, what's next? The first thing people tend to think about is which tools they should learn first. I should learn SQL or Tableau or even R, and they're not wrong. Tools are important. But I would argue if you're at the beginning of your career, you should focus on soft skills more than tools. Data analysis is more than just learning points and clicks. If you don't know why or how to critically look at something, you won't know what kind of questions to ask. If you're not actively listening, you might miss things you otherwise wouldn't. You can have the most beautiful statistical model in the world, but analysis is about how people use the information you give them, and that requires being able to communicate it effectively. The only people that will be impressed with your fancy model are other analysts, and not the people who need the information. So explore the library for skills on active listening, critical thinking, and effective presentations of data. These are very key components of an analyst. Once you have those soft skills down, focus on specializing in an area. If you enjoy data cleaning, mining, and querying, you might explore more on relational database design theory, as well as digging deeper into SQL and using it to query. If you enjoyed the visualization portions of this course, you might explore the other tools dedicated to visualization and dig deeper into tools like Power BI Desktop that we used in this course. No matter what your next step will be, just keep making steps to further your understanding and your skills working with data.